Yeah. Yeah. So I remember 8 months ago or something like that, when the idea was first suggested that everything is going to be closed and the children are going to be home, how the world panicked. Everybody said, no, 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 it's not possible. Cannot be home with your kids for more than 4 hours at a time. And they were serious. And everybody was sure that it would be a disaster. Which now, when we think about it, that thinking was a disaster. How is it possible that parents dread to be home with their kids? And do the kids know this? Do they know that this is a horrible thought, to be alone with your kids at home? That would be terrible. Terrible for the kids, terrible for the family, just terrible. So it turns out that for most people, it was not so bad. It was surprisingly good. Much better than expected. Because the children love to be home and the parents love to have their children. Which is very good news. The question is, what do you do? How do you use this time together to the maximum advantage? But the first thing that has to be is the pleasure. The pleasure of having your kids at home. If they don't feel that pleasure, then there's already trouble, there's already problems. So the first thing has to be the closeness, the warmth of the family, of the nourishing and supportive home atmosphere. You have to let your children know that you are thrilled to have them home all full time. You know, as sad as it is that they're missing school, but having them home is wonderful. And this is one of the things that our lifestyle before the corona, before the lockdown, our lifestyle, we now realize, was very unhealthy. Very unhealthy. We had gotten used to it and we thought it was normal. It turns out that it's not at all. We were talking recently around the table. What happened to people who are in business and manufacturing, sell products? What happened to the pride that people had in their product? Everybody wanted to produce the better product, the superior product. And when they advertised their product, it was always about, this product is wonderful and it's good and it's got this advantage and that advantage. Today, they don't advertise the product. They advertise everything around the product. Everything goes better with Coke. What is Coke? What's in it? Why would I want to drink it? Not a word. So what happened to people's pride in their products? And the answer that we all agreed on is that, whose product is it? Who should be proud of the product? The stockholders? They don't even care if it sells, as long as the stock goes up. So it has become so impersonal. So who cares about the product? Nobody. Which means, who cares about the customer? Nobody. You have to bluff. You have to lie to sell your product. But nobody is proud of the product. So advertisement is false. It's manipulative. because everything is so impersonal. School is impersonal. Going to work is impersonal. In the olden days, when a father left the house to go to work, it's because he wanted to support his family. Today, he goes to work to get away from his family. And if the family calls him in the middle of the day, he's upset. Why are you interrupting me? So what happened to our priorities? Now we look back at it and we realize it was so bad. It's not life even. You can't call it life. So the first thing we have to do and take advantage is to refocus. Being home is the best, not second best. There is nothing better than being home. You have to go to school because you have to learn certain subjects. Okay, so sadly, you have to leave the house. But to be a relief to the parents that the kids are out of the house, that's not a good message. Now, so the question is, it's wonderful to have the kids at home, but they need to do something. They need to be busy. They need to be productive. So what should we do? How do we take advantage of this time that we're now going to spend with our kids at home? And a very closely related other question is, what do parents do that they're stuck with each other at home? Here also, 8 months ago, everybody panicked. The police were panicking. They were afraid it's going to be the violence at home. They were prepared for the worst. Many, many marriages got better. Marriages that were on the verge of divorce got better because there was no distraction. They were home with each other. For the first time in their lives, they really got to know each other. And they were grateful to have each other. So their marriages are much better now than they were before. I would say that probably 80% of a child's insecurity, of a child's anxiety, is the tension between the parents. I mean, everybody knows this is true. Children pick up that tension immediately. As subtle as it is, as much as you try to hide it, children pick it up. And if they sense that there's tension between parents, they can't concentrate on their school. They're not going to do well. School is not nearly as important to them as what happens at home. And if they're worried what's happening at home because they feel tension, and they're worried that maybe there's going to be nasty feelings or even a divorce, God forbid, they can't concentrate on anything else. Nothing else is worth their attention when they got something so serious to worry about. So here are the two opportunities. How do we make our relationships better that give the children a greater security at home? And what do we do to fill the time creatively and guide our children in a good direction when we finally have an opportunity to do that? Because we're home and they're home. So take it as a blessing. This is not a challenge. This is not a threat. This is not a punishment. This is not your personal Gehenna. This is an opportunity to really become family. If you can relax and see it as a great blessing, then we can start the productive, healthy growth that this can bring. So the first thing is talk to your children. Just talk. give them the impression that they are welcome in your house. That may sound like a joke, but for many children, they need to discover that because they're not sure. They're not sure they're welcome. I mean, the way children need to be welcome in their own home. Talk to your children. Take pleasure in the fact that they're home with you. So, what should you talk about? So there was one time I was suggesting that whenever you have a free moment, this isn't, before Corona, let's say you're going out shopping and your daughter is home, ask her to come with you. Why should she stay home while you go shopping? You can spend time together. So I suggested to this mother, whenever you go out, ask your daughter to come with you. She said, for what? As if for nothing, just to be together. She said, but what will we talk about? This is the mother, not the daughter. The mother says, what are we going to talk about? So you have to write a script of what you're going to say to your daughter. Say whatever you want to say, or don't say anything, but be together. Enjoy the very presence of your children. But this is an opportunity to communicate and to share and to teach, to actually raise your children. So what does it mean to raise children? It's a pretty basic question. Raising children means introduce a pleasure for them in their lives that is better than the pleasure they're experiencing now. So you find out, what are your children experiencing? What's giving them pleasure? What attracts them? What are they drawn to? Because that's where their pleasure is. Find out what it is and introduce something better. Don't criticize what is. Don't reject it. Just bring in something better. And this starts at childhood. It starts from a baby. A baby enjoys putting things in their mouth. That's all they enjoy. Touch, taste, that's it. You want to introduce something a little more elegant, a little more impressive than touch and taste. So we introduce music. We sing to our children from the youngest age, because we want the child to know that there is more pleasure in life than eating. We don't criticize eating. We don't make fun of it. But we introduce something better. That's called raising children. It's not disciplining, it's raising. You raise your child to a higher pleasure, to a higher standard of life. What is a higher standard of life? A higher pleasure. When you're home with your children, you get to see very clearly what gives them pleasure, and now you know that they're in need of a higher and better pleasure, and you can help them with that. So music is a much more refined, a much more able pleasure than touch and taste. And you can see how kids love it. You don't have to develop a taste. It's enjoyable. It's also enjoyable to hear stories um, of great characters, of great achievements. So we read stories to our children. That's really very important, and you have to be careful what you're reading to them. To read nonsense to them is not helpful at all. They don't need adults to introduce nonsense. They have their own nonsense, which is natural. So the books we read to our children should be about people who were special, people who were very brave, people who were very kind, people who were very smart. And when you do that, and you see the pleasure that they get from it, you realize this is a greater pleasure even than music. One of the symptoms of our very materialistic lifestyle is that when children are 16, 17, 18, the highest pleasure they have found is music. Not even good music. But music is like an obsession with teenagers. In fact, as teenagers, they should have moved to a higher level. The pleasure of music is introduced into their lives when they're 7, 8, 9. By the time they're 17, 18, 19, they should have a higher pleasure than just music. I mean, music is still a pleasure, but it shouldn't be their obsession. They should have graduated to the pleasure of good character, of noble behavior, of rising above the ordinary, selfish, childish, self-serving behavior into something idealistic. Teenagers by nature are very idealistic. And we don't encourage it. We don't tap into it. So what is the higher pleasure after music is good character. How kind are you? How compassionate are you? How loyal are you? Those are big issues, big pleasures. So again, when they're young, they hear about it in stories with other people. By the time they're teenagers, they should start enjoying themselves being kind, noble, loyal, courageous. But we have to give them the substance. We have to give them the information. They should be loyal to what? They should be courageous about what? They should be compassionate to whom? This is called raising children. So you sit and talk to your children and listen. Listen to where their pleasure is. Don't criticize it. Don't debate it. Don't reject it. Just hear it. Find out where your teenager is. That means, where is he getting pleasure? What is her or his passion? Because that's where they live. Where the passion is, that's where life is happening. And it's dreadful to think the average teenager in America and Canada, where's their pleasure? Where is their passion? What do they even know about to be passionate about? Video games? The music they hear on the radio? The rap lyrics? It's horrible. And this is their pleasure in life. So now we have a great opportunity. Introduce a greater pleasure. And you don't have to convince them, just expose them When they see the better pleasure, they will find a pleasure. And pleasure is irresistible. As far as they know, there's only one thing to get pleasure from. We have to show them there are other pleasures, and they'll want it. That's the first thing we need to do. Talk to your children about being kind. Talk to your children about being selfless, not selfish. The beauty of it, the greatness of it, and the pleasure of it. Stories are still a good way of doing it, but on an adult level. Can't talk to teenagers as if they were children. They don't buy it. They don't hear it. You have to speak to them like an adult. And you have to expect, not demand, but expect that they will understand what you're saying, they will get it, and they will like it. Because what you're telling them is absolutely correct. So here are a few assumptions. Number one, you have to assume that every child, every teenager is idealistic. They don't want to be selfish. That's childish. They're ready to move on to adulthood. The difference being selfish or idealistic. So they are idealistic. They were just never given an ideal to devote themselves to. No one ever gave them any responsibility that they could feel proud of, an accomplishment, of an achievement, of meaning something. Let's put it in another way. We all tell our children how much we love them. More, less, we tell them. Because we know that we're supposed to. Can't imagine not telling your children you love them. That's not acceptable by today's standards. However, it's not enough. Telling children you love them is not enough. And that's why it's not working. The experts say, if your child is unhappy, if your child is rebellious, if your child is cold, love him more. How much are you going to love before you admit that it's not working? Love is not the solution. Of course you tell him you love him. But that's not what the child needs to hear most. What the child needs to know most is that they are necessary, not lovable. Sometimes a child knows that the way they're behaving is not lovable. And the parents say, no, I love you. They don't believe you. The way they're behaving, you should not be loving them. You should be angry at them. You should be turned off. You should be disgusted, because that's what their behavior deserves. And you say, no, I love you. They don't buy it. They would rather that you react to what they're doing and how they're behaving so that they know that they're getting your attention. To say I love you anyway means you're not paying attention. Don't you see I'm misbehaving? Don't you see I'm getting myself into trouble? And you love me. So if you really loved me, you would do something about my problem. So the first thing a child needs to know is not that you love him. That's good for a 5-year-old. But with a teenager, the teenager needs to know that they're necessary. They're important in your life, even when you don't love them. Because sometimes their behavior doesn't warrant love. But their existence always needs to be significant, important, and indispensable. A family would not be a family without them. You would not be you without them, without him, without her. They have to know that. And not when you're desperate, when you're happy, and when they're happy. Their existence is essential to you because you can't imagine yourself without them. This is really crucial, and we've neglected it. A child needs to know that he's important. Why? Because in the essence of a human being, what separates us from animals is that we live with a purpose. We accomplish something. Day after day, we get closer to achieving our purpose. We don't just hang around. An expression very popular among teenagers. They're going to hang out. That's sad and dangerous. Life is not about hanging around or hanging out. It means you're going nowhere, you're doing nothing, you're accomplishing nothing, and nobody needs you. So you hang out because you got to be somewhere. If you hear your children speaking that way, you got to have a serious conversation. A teenager can make a huge difference in your life, in their siblings' life, in their friends' life, in their classmates' life. Everybody creates a world. Everybody. Everybody who is alive gives off vibration, positive or negative, but never neutral. So a child needs to know what you're doing for the world is necessary. The effect you're having on the people around you is important. And that's why you're here. That's why we're all here. You have to challenge teenagers. What are you doing to make the world better? I know the world's messed up. They know it, you know it, everybody knows it. But that's not a complaint, that's a challenge. If the world is messed up, then let's start fixing it. One step at a time, one person at a time, one mitzvah at a time. So here's what I'm really saying. To sum it up, a teenager is ready to be something more than herself. Telling her you love her is very nice, but that's all about herself. She's ready to hear that her existence, her life, makes a difference in the world. It's not just her. That leads to narcissism. It's all about me. It's all about my needs, my feelings, my wants, my weaknesses, my moods. It's a terrible trap to fall into. Me, 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 me. And they hate it. As much as they do it, they hate it. Give me, I want, how come I can't have? That's because they have nothing better. But they are ready to realize, I am not here for me. So we have a very good example, picture that comes from the wealthiest people in the world today. Somebody is Somebody is worth billions of dollars, $60 billion. Anyone who has $60 billion, do they really believe for a moment that all that money was meant to be theirs for them? It's not possible. How can any human being in the world need $60 billion? It's not possible. So imagine somebody has $60 billion in cash and he keeps it under his mattress. And you ask him, what is that? He says, my money. Say, yeah, but what are you doing? I'm keeping it. It's mine. That's insane. And everybody knows it. It has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with belief, it has nothing to do with the Torah, with the Bible. You have $60 billion and you're sitting on it? It's obviously not for you because you don't need it. You'll never be able to use it. You'll never be able to spend it. And so these people very naturally give away a lot of their money. Not because they're the best people in the world. Not because you can't deny that this money is not meant for me. It can't be meant for me. So what would you say to somebody who has $60 billion under his mattress? And you say, what are you doing with that money? I'm not doing anything. It's mine. That's crazy. The same is true with life itself. You speak to a teenager. You have a life? For what? It's my life. It is your life, but it's for you. That's like the guy with the $60 billion saying it's my money. I know it's your money, but who says it's for you? It can't be for you. The same is true with life. We each have a life, but is it for me? That doesn't make sense anymore. I have a life, so I keep my life. For what? To stay alive. For what? To be alive. See, it doesn't go anywhere. It's a dead end. And somehow we're feeling it more today than ever in the past. Because in the past, we were so busy trying to stay alive because it was difficult. Now, staying alive is no challenge. So now we have to ask ourselves, what's it for? What is my life for? For me? Doesn't make sense. It's a thing that a teenager must think about, must have conversation about it. It's my life. Yeah, it is. What are you doing with it? Keeping it? And the same is true with information. People who are wise and people who are smart and people who know what all that information is just for you to keep. That's crazy. Nothing we have, this is really important, nothing we have is meant for us. Like love. You have love? Yeah. So what are you doing with it? Well, I love myself. You love yourself? Love was made for you to love yourself? That's being a miser with your love. Love is something you give, not something you keep. The reason you're capable of love is not so that you can love yourself. You're going to choke on it. I know this goes against popular psychology. No, you must love yourself. We do love ourselves. And the more we love ourselves, the more choked we feel. Because we're bigger than that. Teenager needs to know the world is waiting for you to make a difference, not for yourself, beyond yourself. They love that challenge. And it's got to be cultivated, not forced. So if a teenager is bored, a teenager feels unchallenged, if he feels that he's got so much to give but no one to give it to, they end up getting into trouble. They end up giving it to all the wrong people. So start a conversation with your kids. What are we here for? They'll understand it. Every time I try, every time I speak to teenagers about this, they understand it better than adults. Because an adult thinks that he has to pay his mortgage. That's what he's here for, to run the company or the team or whatever it is we're busy with. We think that's it. Teenagers don't have that distraction. So they can think more clearly, what am I here for? You enlarge their existence. Take them above themselves, beyond themselves. Their existence is not so tiny. Give me this and give me that, and I need one of those. That is so tiny. It's so claustrophobic after a while. Essentially, that is what Chassidus is. That's what Chabad is. The Rebbe raised us with a fantastic message. You are here to change the world, not to sit there and just be yourself. The Rebbe didn't allow us to think of ourselves as private citizens. Minding my own business. That's not good enough. No, I'm being the best I can be. That's not good enough. Not nearly good enough. What have you done for God's plan? How have you made the world a more godly place? So a child tells you that a friend of his did something not so nice, not so good, not so kosher. Your first instinct is to say, don't be friends with him. The better thing is to say, so what did you do to help him? What can we do to help him? How do we make it better? How do we get him on the right track? Own the responsibility. That's called idealistic. Teenagers love being idealistic. Just give them the right information. You know, it's interesting that the mitzvah of Hanukkah is to light an additional candle each night of Hanukkah. That is really unusual in Judaism. What other mitzvah in Judaism do you have to increase every day? None. You put on tefillin every day, the same pair of tefillin. You don't have to put tefillin on twice on the second day or 3 times on the third day. Once on Sunday, twice on Monday, 3 times on Tuesday. No. And that makes sense. If you put tefillin on Sunday and you fulfill the mitzvah, then the mitzvah is perfect. Why would you need to add, if it's perfect for Sunday, why do you have to do it twice on Monday? So it would make very, very much sense. Hanukkah is an 8-day celebration. So every night you should light 8 candles. The debate in the Gemara is, do you light 8 candles the first night and then 7 the next night and then 6 the next night? Or do you light 1 candle the first night and 2 the really obvious thing is light 8 candles every night. It's an 8-day holiday, so we light 8 candles every night of the holiday. Shabbos candles, you don't add another candle every Shabbos. So why is this mitzvah different? Now, it may be the miracle of Hanukkah happened in Israel, in the promised land, in our home, in our own land. We were there. We had a Beis Hamikdash, the temple. It was wonderful. You could go 3 times a year and celebrate Yom Tov and Yerushalayim. But it became routine. It became a habit. It was the same every year. Everything was peaceful. Everything was nice. It was perfect. And because it was perfect, no one ever thought, how do we increase? How do we grow? How do we move up the ladder? It was so good, we didn't even think of a ladder. We had reached a plateau. And it was good enough. Why go any further? The miracle of Hanukkah came, and suddenly their comfort zone was disturbed. So when they rededicated the temple and they went to light the menorah, they didn't go back to the habit of pre-Hanukkah. They said, no, from now on, we got to add a candle every night. We can't just get used to a habit, a ritual performed without thinking, without feeling. You have to add, you have to grow, you have to increase. Do we want to go back to pre-corona? I want to go back to the business world that is so greedy and competitive and produces so much anxiety and so much depression. You want to go back to that? What for? You're going to send kids back to school that they dread going to every morning. They come home and complain. They're bored. They don't like the subject. They don't see why they have to learn it. We don't want to go back to that. We want a much better model of life. God is giving us time to think about that, to talk about that, and to be free of the habit. The habit has been broken. We don't have to go back to it. Even going to shul had become such a habit, such a ritual. So even the shuls are stopped. Not a punishment, God forbid. God is not displeased with us, but he's elevating us to a higher level. What was good yesterday needs to be better today. Like the Hanukkah candles. Yesterday, one candle was perfect. On the second day of Hanukkah, one candle is not enough. No, yesterday was perfect. But today you need 2. And today, 2 candles is perfect. But tomorrow, you're going to need 3. So let's assume that we did fine by our children. They're healthy, they're intelligent, they're happy with their lives. It's good for today. What's going to be tomorrow? It has to be better. Idealism is always upward. It's always vertical, not horizontal. So there's the ladder that stands on earth and reaches into heaven. That's the ladder of life. You're either going up the ladder or down the ladder. Got to help our children go up every day. We're not looking for perfection. You don't have to make yourself crazy. Did I grow today? What did I do today? It's just a general attitude. Good is good, perfect is perfect, but it can always get better. And therefore it should. So we are designed for this. We were created to climb the ladder. If we don't, then we feel like our lives are worthless. Then we just hang out. So listen to your teenager. Understand what they're saying. Understand why they're bored, why they feel under-challenged. And after you tell them how much you love them, tell them how necessary they are in God's plan. And that every mitzvah, any mitzvah, whether it's between the human being and the Creator, or between one human being and another, every mitzvah changes the world. It's not selfish, it's not personal. It's not so that you'll go to heaven or that you'll be famous or that you'll be respected. It changes the world. And every one of us is responsible for the world. And they know enough. I mean, they hear the news. They hear the conversations. They know the world is in trouble. And what is the trouble? There isn't enough goodness. That's all. There isn't enough goodness. There isn't enough honesty. There isn't enough virtue. So you start. Add a little light, get rid of a lot of darkness. Do we have the ability to hear questions from people? Do we have that technology?
Yes, of course we do. Thank you very much, Rabbi Friedman. Our first question that came in it's a little bit more of a spiritual question. It's dealing with a teenage son that needs to be bribed daily to put on tefillin. And the mother that's asking the question is, when the child says, do I have to put on tefillin for you, for God, or for the prize? And she sees that her son is maybe a little wiser than her, and she'd like to know how to answer such a question.
All three are true, but the main purpose is to make the world the kind of world that its creator wants. It's not our world. Children know this. It's not our world. I didn't create the world. Somebody created it, and that somebody wants it to be a certain way. And the only way that can happen is if we do it for him. So putting on tefillin, much bigger than me, my reward. It's not a house rule. It's a universal tool that brings God into the world and brings the world closer to God. So every time he puts on tefillin, he should do it carefully, he should do it respectfully, and then when he takes them off, he should think, I hope I did it right. And you say to God, I did your mitzvah, I hope I did it right.
Thank you. Here's another one. I know that you said that we should not be dreading to be home with our children. It's not that I'm dreading being home with the children, I'm dreading that my performance will be a disappointment to my children. How do I help this 3-week experience be a uplifting experience, a positive experience for us as parents and for the child that's living with us?
I think most people dread being alone with their children, not because they hate their kids, but because they feel inadequate. I don't have enough to fill the day to talk to my children, to tell them, what am I going to tell them? I don't know what to tell them. That's the dread. And that's common to almost all parents in the world. Good parents. So what we need is to have a little more belief and faith in God. If God made me the parent, the mother or the father, and if God gave me these children with their personalities and with their strengths and weaknesses, can't be a mistake. I have what those children need. I must. What is it? Well, talk to your children, you'll find out. Don't look in books. Don't read books about what you should tell your child. You're different. Your child is different. It's unique. You're a perfect match for each other. You're exactly what the child needs, and the child is exactly what your challenge is supposed to be. So be a little more confident. Two things. God trusts you. So take that as a compliment and proceed with confidence. Secondly, God doesn't trust you. And that's why he is the third partner in the birth of the child, because he's not going to put all his trust in a human being to take care of his children. So he is always involved. He's an active partner. So whatever you don't do, he'll do. So you got it from both sides. On the one hand, he trusts you to be the mother or the father. And on the other hand, it's never good enough for him. He's always involved being the third partner and filling in wherever he needs to. So stop judging yourself. You can't be your own judge and jury. You have to trust. God knows what he's doing. He gave you these children. You're the only parents they'll ever have because you're the only parents they'll ever need. That is absolutely true. No child is punished or tortured by having the wrong parents. The parents are always exactly what the child needs. Unfortunately, sometimes the child needs a very difficult challenge. And so the parents present that challenge. But that's the exception. Most parents are perfect for their children in giving them a direction and giving them an identity, and mainly in making them feel necessary. So stop questioning yourself. There's no time for that.
Powerful, thank you. How do we compete with devices and screens? We want to get involved, but we have a big competition.
Yeah. So in every contest, in a baseball game, if your team is not confident, if your team is intimidated by the other team, you've already lost. We shouldn't be intimidated. Because what is attracting their attention is so meaningless, and it's so empty, and it's so unimpressive that we should laugh at it. This is my competition? That's really sad. I'm teaching you what is right, what is true, what is beautiful from my parents, from my grandparents, from the Torah, from God. And you're busy what? With a fake game shooting people? Come on, this is not competition. So the first thing is don't be threatened. Don't be intimidated. And when you see them enjoying the game, treat it like, something silly, and it's a good way of filling time with doing nothing. But it's not competition to So like not very long ago, many Jews living in Russia had a very different challenge. Communism was very appealing. It sounded so right. It sounded so moral, so high-minded. It was going to fix the world, change the world, make it better for everybody. That's hard to argue with until they saw how it's not helping anybody at all. But the concept was so appealing. So they became really self-righteous. Communism was better for the world than Judaism. You had a real argument on your hands. But what teenager is going to say that my Xbox is more important than Judaism? Nobody. So our competition today is so weak. It's so empty, so unimpressive, that there's no question. If you introduce a little bit of value, a little bit of high-mindedness, challenge your kid to make a difference in the world, you have no competition. It might take a while because habits are hard to break, but it's not a competition that used to be.
Thank you. Here is a parent that is dreading the 3 weeks, not because she dreads being home with her child, but because she has to work. So she's going to be working from home. Her child is home, and she feels like she's going to be stressed at her child. She would like to be a more active parent, but so her child is basically entertaining himself. And how does she balance that difficult situation where she's working and her child is home at the same time, and she's not really there for him?
Any idea how old the child is?
From what I understand, it's a teenager.
A teenager should be able to fill their own time. They don't need full-time attention. So the time that she does have with her teenager is enough. Just use it well.
Okay, she just wrote me that it's not a teenager.
Younger?
And he's an only child at home.
Mm-hmm. That is a challenge. It sounds like you're going to need a babysitter or somebody to come in and take care of the child while you're working. Hopefully you make enough money to be able to afford a babysitter. But to try to do it all yourself will only be frustrating. Don't be superhuman. You have only so much time and so much energy. Don't try to be more than human. So if you need a babysitter, get a babysitter. If you need to bring the child to a babysitter, whatever it is. Because if you must work, then you got to be realistic.
Thank you. Any words of wisdom regarding child rivalry and competition?
Competition could be productive. Instead of making it nasty and selfish, competition can be very good. The Rebbe used to have competition with his brothers when they were young. They would compete to see who can learn a language quicker. It was good. So give them a healthy way of competing with each other that is productive and that helps both of them achieve more than they would without the competition. Or if that's not possible, then they got to stop competing. They have to stop being threatened by each other. And for that, you have to talk to each one of them separately and say, what are you doing for your sibling? Don't compete. Take responsibility. Do the right thing. Do the good thing. Don't be threatened. Each sibling needs the other. So, be what you're needed to be. There's no threat. Again, instead of worrying about what's wrong, move in a forward direction. You're competing with each other. I've got a much better idea. Take care of each other. Move them forward.
Thank you so much. This is going on a different tangent, but still a question. What do you think about homeschooling? Is that a valid option these days, in your opinion?
It's a valid option, and sometimes it's the only option. So don't fight it. If that's the only option, do it, and do it well, and enjoy it. Sometimes it's better than school. Maybe not for 10 years. You know, a child needs social contacts and so on. But if this is what's happening and you have an opportunity to be your child's teacher, why not? Enjoy it. You get to learn something too.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions that were asked, but if there's anybody that wants to put it on the chat, if you didn't have a chance to send it to me directly through WhatsApp, you can chat it now, put it on the chat, and the rabbi can answer it. Looks like everybody is...
Everybody's content?
So here's one question that just came in. How do you deal with a child that you want to educate, but he consistently does not listen to you? In other words, you want to give him love, you want to give him everything, kindness, and but he's just not listening and to any instruction, to any advice from you. And so there's a frustration, parent-child frustration relationship.
Stop trying so hard. I get the impression, I get the feeling you're trying too hard. You're pushing and you're pushing and you're hoping and you're waiting and you're expecting, and the child feels very burdened. Relax. Teaching is not a burden. It's a great opportunity. So whenever there's an opportunity and he's in a good mood and he can hear what you're saying, tell him something nice. That's called teaching. And don't wait for a reaction. Like every time I tell you something, you have to become a better person immediately. No, plant your seeds. Make sure he heard what you're saying and just let it go. The information will sit there in his brain and will eventually show up as an improvement in his behavior. This is not the army. It's not like when I tell you to stand, you stand. When I tell you to salute, you salute. You're educating. That's called cultivating. You give them good ideas. You plant good seeds. They may show up a year from now, 10 years from now, but you're doing your job. So it sounds like you're pressuring yourself to accomplish quickly, and then it feels like you're pressuring your child, and so the child fights back. So relax. Be yourself. When you have an opportunity to share some wisdom with your child, do it. If you have to wait a day, that's okay. Wait a day. Today he's in a bad mood. He's not going to hear what you're saying. Okay, so tomorrow. Mañana.
So in conclusion, another interesting question is that we are now in at least a 10-month pandemic, and we're talking about 3 weeks of vacation, but the 3 weeks can become 6 weeks, and then we can go back to school and then go back. We're like bouncing back. Our children do not have the opportunity to have any afternoon activities. Kids are not using their energy they're not able to release their energy on any extracurricular activities. And we find many children are suffering from anxiety, and we're just feeling very, very anxious about the future and the whole situation.
Which tells you very clearly, where are the children getting their anxiety from? From the parents, because the parents are anxious. So the parents need to be a little more confident. The world is not coming to an end. The world is not going to be over. Things are only going to get better. They're getting better every day, by the way. The world is getting better. Life is getting better. The news doesn't report it because that's not their job. Their job is to report only bad news and fake news. So they're doing their job. Don't expect them to tell you good news. But the good news is everywhere, just not in the news. The world is getting better. In 3 weeks from now, the world is going to be a lot better. Stop worrying.
Here is a parent that's asking, how do you introduce a higher ideal without being critical?
I don't even understand the question. Why do you need to be critical? Because you have a better idea. If your idea is better, you don't have to be critical.
Ideal.
Yes. If your ideal is better, then you don't have to be critical. And you also don't have to force it. If you have to be critical and force, then your ideal is probably not so good. If it's a good ideal, if it's a worthy ideal, you don't have to knock anything else, and you don't have to force, and you don't have to be anxious about it. Just present it and let it do its thing. MS is convincing. Don't have to force it. The only time you feel a need to force is when you're not sure you're right. So go with confidence. Again, you have to be confident. You know, this society took our confidence away. We think the teachers know our children better than we do. And the teacher writes home a report card, your child has this problem, that problem. You feel so guilty, so inadequate, as if the teacher knows better. The teacher doesn't know better. You know better. Again, it's become so impersonal. Don't be intimidated. And stop reading books on how to raise children. They make you crazy. Raise your children the way you want to raise your children. That's what God is asking of you. He's not asking you to go to school to get a PhD in child raising. You're the mother. Teachers should have a little more respect for the mother. Doctors should have more respect for the mother. Because ultimately, the mother knows best. Don't let them steal you of your confidence. But I want to say something about Hanukkah. The world is getting so much better. There is so much optimism, so much reason for optimism. When you think about the big menorah that is standing in front of the Kremlin, You realize what a miracle that is? How far we've come in a few years. And then there's a Menorah standing in front of Nazi headquarters in Berlin. You know what a miracle that is? And now we have a Menorah in Dubai. Because we always had Menorahs in Morocco. Thanks to your family. But communism now has a Menorah. Nazism now has a Menorah. Islam now has a Menorah. What's left? The world is so much better than it was a few years ago. There's good reason to be optimistic. And those people who are sowing fear, don't be naive. We thought back in the 30s, we thought everything was good and it was a disaster. No. The Jews in Germany thought everything was great because they had become Germans. That's a mistake. Nothing is better when Jews become Germans. Nothing is better when Jews become communists. Nothing is better when Jews become Americans. But when communism becomes more Jewish, when Berlin becomes more Jewish, when Islam becomes more Jewish, that is a very good reason for optimism. So your kids are going to be fine. The world is going to be fine. You just want to make sure that you did your part. So don't panic. Don't be anxious about it. Enjoy your children and give them the best you have. All the wisdom your parents gave you. And some of the Narishkeit too. You don't have to be better parents than your parents. You'd like to be. You should try to be, but you don't have to be. Let your children turn out to be like you. That would be great. So stop panicking. Thank God every morning for the mitzvah of raising your child, and then go do it. Without fear, without worry, without comparing yourself to other parents. Just be a parent, that's all. Good, mediocre, whatever. Be a parent. And if you're busy being a parent, God will never have a complaint. You were parenting. That's all he's asking. So you should be successful. Enjoy the process. Enjoy your children. They're wonderful. They're brilliant. They're much smarter than we were at their age. Put it to good use. Give them something to put their energies into. Challenge them. They'll love it.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Friedman, for this incredible wisdom that you shared with us. And wish you Shavua Tov. Everyone should stay healthy, and it should be a very wonderful and meaningful vacation with stay-home parents and stay-home children. Ari, are you asking a question? Oh, you're saying L'chaim. L'chaim, Ari. All the best to you.
When all else fails, say L'chaim.
That's it. Great idea, Ari. Ari's a new parent, wish him a big, big mazel tov with his miraculous little daughter. So he's now listening to how to be a good parent. He tried so hard to be a parent. Now you're trying to be a good parent. Now that you have the child, the miracle child, Baruch Hashem. Shavua Tov to everyone.
Don't be a good parent. Just be a parent. It's not a contest. Which means take the pressure off. Just enjoy being a parent. And you'll see good results. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So much.